Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns. I will not take but just a few moments of your time. You are about to see a video once again of myself and Larry Bankston going toe-to-toe over the issue of public records request. And let me just say this, Mr. Bankston is making a huge issue of this redacting. Redacting has been a red herring for the LALB for some number of years now. My own frank opinion, it is a justification for running up legal fees. You're going to hear Mr. Bankston say it was his office bill, the LALB, $3,000 for such redacting services over the last 30 days. Let me just say this. We made nearly identical natured requests, both of the Louisiana Senate and of the governor's office. And the governor's office response came from Miss Emily Boyce, who is the longtime head of public records requests for the Attorney General's office. There was no such redacting. All of the material came to us with mailing addresses, with email addresses. There was no effort to redact any of this material. Furthermore, the material was delivered to us via email, which made it much more convenient. Likewise, for the Louisiana Senate, Miss Yolanda Dixon, who is in charge of public records of the body of the Senate, we got public records from them. Now, we did physically go for them, and we did wand scan them as we do for the LALB. But once again, there was none of this redacting and none of these type charges being racked up. And I would submit to you quite simply that Mr. Bankston is keenly aware that we're not going to be filing any more pro se lawsuits. The reason for that is, as I stated in this video, or in this episode that we filmed from the LALB meeting, I am extremely comfortable with the present person holding the Attorney General's position, that being Jeff Landry, versus the prior gentleman being Buddy Caldwell. And so I think the bottom line here, and you're going to see the exchange between Mr. Bankston and myself, is that, look, the well has run dry on him being able to defend against pro se lawsuits for a public records nature. He perhaps had gotten used to that kind of revenue. You'll see $56,000 budgeted for the LALB for legal expenses for this fiscal year. It has that kind of numbers had to be made up somewhere, and the red herring of redacting sure does provide a convenient little ploy. You'll also see me calling him on the carpet about what he wants to portray as the voluminous nature of what we asked for, when, as I said, and he cut me off as his usual rude behavior, that they printed out every spam email in that office during the period that we requested. Now, let me just say this. I know Mr. Bankston is not happy with the public records request that we have made, neither is the board. We have requested the text, we have requested the emails, and they had a damning little conspiracy going on to prevent Reverend Freddie Lee Phillips's confirmation to the Louisiana Auctioneer Licensing Board. That's not my problem, okay? You know, I'm sure nobody's happy with the fact we've now got our hands on that material, but the material is what it is, okay? And if you're wondering why we're not making public with it, that will happen at the time that is deemed appropriate. We are doing that which we believe to be appropriate with material at the present time. So I welcome you to watch yet another exchange between myself and Larry Bankson over the whole issue of public records requests. Thank you so much. Look forward to bringing you more videos in the near future.
Over the past 6 weeks, we have in our office responded to 7 separate eight public records requests from Mr. Phillips and Mr. Burns. And as you can see in the list that's been provided, they are extensive. This is just one packet right here of documents that have been produced. They are produced at my office, and one of the things that I will need to get some direction from the board on is the issue of what they call redacted. Let's assume that someone sends an email in concerning an auction. It may have their telephone number, it may have their email address, it may have information. What we have to do is go through these records. Sandy gathers the records, and I will tell you some of it has been extremely burdensome because of the fact that there has been requests, for example, text messages. Well, text messages are not generally easily got. You have to take a screenshot make a copy and send it to an email, then produce that actual text message, and it comes in a series. So it is quite time consuming and it is somewhat difficult. Sandy brings the material to us. She knows in reference to the public documents of what needs to be redacted. But under Louisiana law, there is an absolute obligation under Louisiana law as under federal law that certain items must be redacted. Telephone numbers, dates of birth, social security numbers, and pertinent information such as that. So I do this for this board, I've done it for other boards in which I've represented, is that the lawyer is the one who goes through documents to ensure that the documents have been properly redacted, and that is time consuming. We'll tell you that it's been a substantial expense to the board, over $3,000 in cost and attorney's fees to produce these documents, to redact those documents, and respond to that. We will continue, because they're asking for emails that have been sent and received. We will continue to redact that information that is considered private, which is the individual's telephone numbers, their emails. Because when you send something to a government agency, most people do not realize that that is a public record then. But your right to privacy concerning your email address, your telephone number, should and could be redacted. So we're proceeding with that.
Send that out, that's fine. You don't have to redact anything. Robert, there's a lot on the internet about me, and my address and telephone number are all over the internet, and you can have access to any of that. It's public knowledge anyway. I guess you might say I am a public figure. So you can give me mine. I have no problem. You don't need to redact anything. And there's another request on me that Robert has made, so let's just take care of me. Give me that. Don't redact it.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that.
If there's any problems, Robert, feel free to call me or send me an email.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions anybody may have? Yes, sir.
Is there to be a reason
Not only do you not have to give a reason, you cannot inquire as to.
I'm straight.
So the law.
doesn't necessarily mean like
No. In other words, when you make a public records request, and I've done it, making requests to people, you do not have to state a reason for it, only that the document is or is not a public record. So no one should take consideration that any request that was made is any allegation of any wrongdoing or complaint or whatever. I will tell you this, Mr. Burns has advised previously that he was working his way through all the auctioneer's files. So then in my office, General Lynn or myself go over the documents, and she has a question as to the legitimacy of any redacting. She consults with me. So I wanted to give the board that particular report.
Discussion about this item? Any discussion from the general public about this item?
Well, if I do, I'd prefer to defer that until after the board's had its discussion.
I believe we're done with our discussion.
Y'all aren't going to discuss anything out in public? All right, then I'll comment. If you're not going to conduct any kind of discussion whatsoever in public, I think that goes to the core issue of why I make the public records requests that I do. And Mr. Bankston, I can assure you they are going to continue. And fortunately, I'm very happy with the Attorney General that we have now. I will also point out that this massive pile that you showed, if anybody wants to examine that when we're talking about emails, they printed out every spam email, and that was over half of the volume there. In fact, there are entire pages of just gobbledygook, you know, but it makes for good showmanship.
Mr. Burns, this is not related to that question. You want to address the specific?
I would state that it is, because it goes to the generic nature of whether or not you're going to have public discussions, Mr. Bankston. And so I'm going to state that. I think it is inappropriate to just come out here and vote. Everything was done in secret, but not to worry. I have all of the details of all of the things to put out there. But, you know, as Mr. Phillips said, Reverend Phillips said, We're gonna have transparency, and we're gonna keep it up there. I know you don't like that. A few of the emails and texts, I can see why you wouldn't like the public records request made. But make no mistake, as he said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm done.
I'm done.
I move grant district. It's been a while.
And I second.
Second. All those in favor? Any opposition? Motion passed.